Hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, watch a Doctor Who story chosen by a friend of mine. I commentate along, dropping in facts and observations, and at the end I try to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about the episode might be.
Hi Toby, I'm Iain Key and I've chosen for you The Invisible Enemy. Happy Times and Places.
Well, hello everybody and welcome back. It is part 3 of The Invisible Enemy. And for me, these are some of the very first images I remember from my childhood. A number of them in this episode. And in fact, there's a special moment in this episode that I'm sure I will bore you about when it is on. So without further ado, and with thanks to Iain Key for joining me for this particular edition of Happy Times and Places. He's got a book out. Do try and support all of my guests if you can. One of the reasons I have them on is because I think they're fascinating people who will always give an insight that is worth listening to. Thank goodness, really, considering the rest of the time it's me gassing on. And but also I hope that you will reward the time that they give by making sure you avail yourself of their wares. And Iain is wearing something that it doesn't half clash because it is a people's history of the Clash, and he's passionate and he knows his subject, so good for him. Right, let us descend into one of my childhood, the formative moments of my childhood, as we press play on episode 3 of The Invisible Enemy in 3, 2, 1. It's the time tunnel. I still think of it as the time tunnel. That's what my brothers called it. And let's see what else I remember. Yes, my brothers are both older than me, so they'd got various, as it turns out, they'd got various Target books as well. So my introduction to Doctor Who was very much from being the youngest member of the family. So that sets me apart, I'm sure, from some listeners, because the beauty of the show is we all come to it in different ways. I feel actually slightly improper that I came through it through elder brothers, both of whom grew out of the show. I have an older sister as well, and she, well, I know she took part in some of the fun and games. I remember playing outside, and I'm sure she was Polly once. There was a Ben and Polly. That's how I got introduced to Ben and Polly, because the games that we played crossed Doctors. Really, they were a lot of the times based on what was in the Target books. So I've just noticed that Frederick Jaeger has half moon specs like I do, but actually the bit that goes over his nose is also spectacle. I have not noticed that particular design conceit of his eyewear. I think that's absolutely delightful. You can see something new every time. And of course, that's a sort of plug hole type of effect, but I think that works very well. Plug holes, water swirling down plug holes have been used in Doctor Who always as far back as the first Dalek story, haven't they? But I think this is all good fun, and I buy the bubbles. I do like the sort of visual ideas that take place in some of this. As I say, we've already had the spaceship stuff in part 1 in particular, parts 1 and 2, and then I think that's quite neat, the way of swooshing them inside the Doctor's head. And this must have seemed like a really amazing idea at the time. Obviously, very fantastic voyage. Doctor Who doesn't always go where no genre film or television series has gone before. But Bob Baker and Dave Martin riding fast and loose with what is possible on Doctor Who's budget, which reminds me that I haven't yet read out the comments from last week's episode, so I will have to do that at the end. Apologies to anybody waiting to hear what they'd said. I'm going to do this one topsy-turvy. It's late at night, and I'm in the process of building myself a new sound booth, so it's not always going to go according to plan. It's really interesting seeing this. I haven't seen this in this good quality up close, maybe for a while, or maybe I haven't been looking, but I noticed that Elizabeth Norman has see-through gloves on her hand as well, which is a nice touch. It all feels very medical. The reason I mention other people is that I know that Nev Fountain suggested that we'd been bitching a bit about the white decor. I do not criticise the white decor. It is exactly what I would go for were I mounting a production set in a medical facility. And actually, there's something about shiny white cleanliness. I mean, I think they have it in Alien, don't they? In the pod places where they go to sleep, and there is something about clinical whiteness that can be seen as very effective by designers in science fiction programs, and that anything green or anything smashed sort of seems to sully that kind of perfection. But it's not an aesthetic that I, whilst not rejecting it, I like I remember reading the book and I'd not quite noticed sort of Parsons, but Parsons does get his moment, doesn't he? Because Parsons seems like sort of two-line factotum guy, but actually he gets quite nice bits to do. But then when you learn a bit more about Roy Herrick, he never quite gets as much to do in Doctor Who as he might have done, because in Survivors in particular he plays an excellent part. But yes, sadly died very young. No women at his funeral, I'm told. No women were allowed. Interesting, the things that you pick up. But yes, bless him. But yeah, because he's in, I mentioned last week, he's in The Reign of Terror, and he's the voice of Zoanon in The Face of Evil. Lots of people are the voice of Zoanon, but he's quite a lengthy voice of Zoanon in episode 4. This is quite nice, all this stuff messing about. You're kicking part of my brain. I mean, that's quite witty. And this is decent. I think this design work is good, and the colours here are nice. I mean, I suspect have people been at work on the CSO, which might have been fringier on the original broadcast, but this is nice. All the red colouring there works. Yeah, I can go for a lot of what's going on in the Doctor's brain so far. I think it looks pretty impressive. But yes, I interrupted myself because I do like that moment between Parsons and Professor Marius. Now, this is often described as a goof because the crack is already there in the wall. But that is the reason they target that part of the wall. It's already a weak spot. It's been cracked by the spaceship crashing into the Bi-Al. So K9 then just gives it a helping hand where it's already damaged in order to give them something to hide behind. So that is not a goof. That is perfectly acceptable. I actually like the way that you can sort of see them through the various sort of cracks in the set. I actually like the way that this is shot, that the guys are hiding behind it's the sort of thing that in a war film or something like Starship Troopers would look absolutely amazing. People ducking behind things and sticking their guns out of holes in the wall. It's much harder to do in Doctor Who with the limited number of sets and the studio space and all of that. But I think that setup is actually really nicely done there. So well done, everybody. It's a great visual on the Doctor. Yeah, this is all good, and I like these guys all being all doing their medical stuff. I'd remembered Marius being your main guy, and I remember reading the book and being quite surprised at how much the nurse, Marius's nurse, Elizabeth Norman, not Nell Curran, different people, and Roy Herrick get to do with this part of the process. So I'm glad that it's not all Marius being a one-man band and that his colleagues get to be a sort of part of him. I like all of the Doctor's chat about how the brain works and and they never lose the sight of being able to sort of have a gag about a ganglion, which I think is rather jolly. So yes, and I do like all this organic stuff. I mean, Doctor Who can sometimes struggle with it, sometimes excel with it, Claws of Axos. But what this does provide with these lovely reds and purples, it's not unlike the look of Planet of Evil, which is one of the most successful sort of looks of an alien environment in the show's history. It has the advantage of being shot on film, of course. But the reds here and the sound effects in the background, this is all rather well done. I mean, obviously you'd want, if you were to do this on film or if you were to do it today, it would be clammier and sweatier and there'd be viscosity everywhere. But I think this is looking pretty damn good. And they're having fun with it as well. And it is a nice contrast to the thing I keep interrupting myself talking about, which is the clean white medical aspect of the By-L Foundation, which I was never criticising for it being what it is, because it's the obvious and sensible choice on a design, in terms of design and on a design front, but just in terms of, you know, the aesthetic that particularly compels me. I prefer rusty metal, clanging, you know, metal staircases, or I like caves. But yeah, the clinical white. It's why the Ark in Space I took a long time to get on side with, because I'd imagined it being dark and rusty, and when I saw it, everything was really white and clean. Not a daft choice, but one that is just harder for me as a visual to get behind and engage with, because it's blank and clean and white. So yeah, so sorry about that, but I wasn't bitching. I was just I was just observing that to my personal taste, it's not what I'm after. Nice that we've got a countdown here. People often say that Frederick Jaeger's giving a much sillier performance here than he does in his other Who's, but I'm not sure that's good. Oh, Roderick Smith here, by the way, who I think is about to get killed, is he? Yes, there we go. I was saying he's still around. He's in Trying with Daisy Haggard. Oh, they try and take K9 over. I've forgotten that. And I rather like this. Look at Michael Sheard standing in a very powerful way here. This is great. This is the sort of stuff I would absolutely love as a kid. And that's why I remember those bits. I do remember bits of the gunfight. I remember the bad bald guy. I do remember the lightning between people. But I definitely remember and I remember the white. I remember much more of the white. I remember K9 and Leela and the white and the bald man. I didn't know it was Michael Sheard. I didn't know I would be writing his obituary one day. But yeah, Roderick Smith, who's just been killed off, still working, still going strong. Plenty of telly since. I for some reason I'd got it in my head that he'd done the David Tennant Hamlet, and then I hadn't seen him do much after that. And I went to refresh my memory, and he's done loads. That's a great visual. I'd forgotten about, which is weird because I totally remember Leela sort of hiding behind and shooting things. I remember this, but I don't remember this visual of Sheard on the pillar. And oh, that's quite a nice. Oh, that's I love K9 banging into the wall because he's not quite working. And that makes sense to me as well. They've tried to take over. Jim McManus looks like my friend Leon as well. They've got a very similar mouth and eyes. Leon's Doctor Who fan. I don't think he listens to this though. But I that makes sense, of course, that it can't quite take over K9 because he's a robot dog. But it enables them to think that Leela's been shot, and then K9 doesn't have to carry on the artifice because he's not coping with it and he bangs into the wall. So it means that our baddies get past Leela without Leela getting killed. So that's a nice bit of storytelling, plotting, and it was not badly done, I didn't think. And this is not badly done, the Doctor's facial makeup. I'm not quite sure I buy this bit about the gap between the logic and the imagination. The mind-brain interface. Because I'm sure if you did an X-ray of my... Anyway, I don't know. I'm not convinced by this bit, but I I kind of enjoy the philosophy behind it, that our sort of brain has a mechanical part, but then it's got a bit that's all sort of dreamy and poetic and isn't really nuts and bolts, as it were, organic nuts and bolts, but it's some sort of intangible bit where the mind does its business. Oh, you see, he's being brave, shutting the nurse in there. But which is bad news, because Parsons has had his moment of that lovely scene where he said, do make sure that you do the business to me if I look like I'm going to turn, and then Parsons gets killed. So poor old Parsons, he looked like he was going to emerge as a character who had various bits and bobs going on. And now Parsons, of course, can't kill Professor Marius, who I think is, the accent aside, but Jaeger was of Germanic heritage. I think he was actually German. Manfred Jaeger was his real name. And I know the scientist with the funny foreign accent is a cliche. That's where I think I had to get the screen grab of Elizabeth Norman, because it's about the only time you see her on her own, really. She does have a scene with Leela in a bit, but she struggles for a close-up, which I would have been very cross about had I been her. But yeah, she ended up doing sort of amateur acting, I think. And there's no shame in that. Kept doing it, but was one of those amateur actors who'd had a professional career, including being in Doctor Who. She's getting some nice stuff to do here, actually. But she looks so young. It's odd to think of these young people as having died of kind of normal old things. She gets decent bits to do there. That's all right. And she gets to share a scene with K9 in his first story. Oh, but that thing on her head is a bit of a nightmare, because it would reflect any number of camera people if you weren't careful. So this is all right. I think this model work is pretty decent. I'd remember this being really shonky and really bad, and the bit we saw before with Leela getting attacked by the footballs was pretty good. I like the fact that they're kind of enjoying it. It does mean that there's not much drama going on in the brain. They're having a bit too much of a fun time, but we have got a countdown, which gives us a bit of I hate needles going in. Now they'd probably make you see that, and it's probably only a retracting thing. But I always turn away in Casualty, even if they're just. And I have blood tests very, very regularly, but I'm not a great fan. I'm not a wuss. I can take it, but I'm actually more of a wuss when I watch it happening on television, and I resent the idea that an actor might have to genuinely have a needle stuck in them in order to make it look real. But and yet I know that in my heart of hearts they really probably don't, and that it's special effects. But anyway, and that even if they did have to have it done, you could have a nurse do it and it would be no problem. But why am I bothered? It doesn't matter. So here's Michael Sheard, who's now fully fledged baddie in this, isn't he? He's the main villain. Okay, this is where it gets. So I think they very cleverly led us into the brain with the better special effects. Although, this is a different style with this back projection stuff going on. It's and the lighting has kind of let us down a bit here because of how they're having to light it. That's made but then again, the weird light in this is part of its visual appeal. But that wasn't such a successful shot. But the rest of it's looking all right. The rest of it's doing very well. Yes, Bob Baker and Dave Martin. It's always the should they be writing for what they know can be done, or are they right to go, well, it's never going to look 100% convincing, so we may as well just be as imaginative as we possibly can. I think I prefer my writers to write within the limitations of what they're going to get, rather than just go, but the nucleus of the swarm. That is the first thing I kind of quoted from Doctor Who. I remember being in the utility room of our house. That's the room next to the kitchen, which has got all of where you had to go and get something from the fridge or whatever. And I remember going, I am the nucleus of the swarm. And I didn't know what nucleus meant then, so I just thought that was his name. Do you know what I mean? Like you would say, I am the evil one, or I am the leader of the pterodactyls or whatever. I thought I am the because that's I thought that I am the nucleus of the swarm. I just sort of assumed that was kind of his name, which is why I remembered this, the claw, and the kind of, I mean, it's not very good, is it? The black bag that he's got on it. So I was always a bit nonplussed when people said, oh, and in The Invisible Enemy, the monster's a giant prawn. Because I remember thinking, well, no, it's a claw, but I'm not a porter. That's very funny. He's very good at saying porter as well. He's got a great line in effrontery, splenetic effrontery. But I remember this extremely well, and it's the sort of scene that Tom Baker, I know, would later say, "Oh God, having to work hard here in order to sort of get the backstory." And this is, it's not squabbling rubber, is it? It's expository bag, expository claw bag, but. I just thought the name of the monster was the nucleus of the swarm. I didn't know a nucleus was a thing, and you could have that's actually its name comes from a sort of scientific thing. I just thought it was like its name, like I am we are the Daleks, we are the Cybermen. I am the nucleus of the swarm. But there was also a problem here, wasn't there, on the DVD, which I'm still getting round to sending back to get a proper copy of, because I know at the end of that scene with the Doctor and the nucleus, there's an issue on the DVD, and I kept meaning to send it back and never did. And that's been on my to-do list for now. What? She stabs him. I mean, yeah, I'd remembered him getting eaten by the balls, because I knew that the clone of Lowe gets totaled here and there. That's effective. The balloons with the spray, the Sensorite beard sprayed on, they are, I think, a reasonable special effect. But Leela stabs him, which, I mean, you wouldn't have today. Any alien that says puny is pretty good as well. Puny is very much a 70s, 80s alien piece of phraseology. Probably other decades too, actually. And you can hear John Leeson in there, can't you, as well? But it's good. It's good. But yes, so when people talked about the prawn, and when I saw pictures later of the prawn, that was not the monster I mentioned. That was not the monster I remembered. The monster I remembered was the bag with the claw. So there we go. That is the end of... And you have this really weird thing where you get a piece of Leela's hair and a knife. But there was a problem there with the episode ending of episode 3 on the DVD, and you could send in a replacement and get it changed for a version that didn't have that kind of authoring error. And I never got round to it, and was regretted, and was like, I'll always have a broken, a faulty Invisible Enemy. But now, of course, I have it on Blu-ray as well, and it's on iPlayer, and I've got the original DVD, which one might even think of as being a collector's item. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, the end bit. That this happens, and then it cuts to that weird bit with the hair and the knife, and then it goes to the episode. Anyway, so this is the giant prawn that everyone talks about. That I don't think's as bad as everybody talks about either. Looks all right there. Does it? Do I like that? Yeah, I think it's all right. I think it has problems a bit later on when it has to move. But what do I know? I was totally convinced by the. Oh, John Leeson gets third billing. Look at that. I was convinced by the bag with the claw. So what do I know? And look, our medic, Pat Gorman, Nucleus, John Scott Martin. Gorman and Scott Martin together on the same slide. Love it. That's a perfectly acceptable synthesis of wonderful walk-ons. So there we go. That is the end of episode 3 of The Invisible Enemy. And I will, well, what I'll do first is I will read out the comments, which I normally do at the beginning, but hey, there are no rules. This is, I'm not even sure I was intending to ever read out listener comments, but it seems to be the way we're doing things these days. And I might not always do it. I don't have to explain myself. We're inside my brain now, and I make the rules. But people seem to. But I'm not a dictator. People seem to quite like it, so I will. But I certainly know that there's mention of Bob and Dave's somewhat cavalier attitude to what is possible, and I know that Dev Fountain tells us off for what we say about the white backdrop. So here we are. Here are the comments that everybody has said. So this is from episode 2 leading into episode 3. So perhaps I should have read these out earlier, but I didn't. And here we are. Nev Fountain says, let's start from the oldest one first. And the oldest one will segue nicely into what happens after this, which is Iain Key, who will be giving us his favourite thing about episode 3. And Iain has said, I'm loving listening to these, as I honestly can't remember what I picked. I could listen to these recordings, but it's more I could listen to those recordings, but it's more fun to play along. Okay, that's fair enough, Iain. So not even Iain knows what he chose, and Iain, and he chose it. Stephen Witkowski says, and I saw Stephen the other day as well at my comedy club, Excess Malarkey, which you should all come and see every Tuesday in Manchester. I was 14. It's just had a 3-page article about it, 53.2, the venue that it's at, in Doctor Who magazine, where they neglected to mention that there's a regular comedy night there that has a bit of a Doctor Who connection. And one of its regular customers is Jonathan Carley, who's the War Doctor. And there are plaques to Bernard Kay, David Warner, and John Abineri there. You'd have thought that they would have managed to pick some of that up if they were to. Anyway, never mind. Stephen Witkowski says, I was 14 when this was first shown, just the right age to start noticing the rough edges. Ah, Stephen. I loved K9 from the off and guessed from the picture in the Radio Times that he might be more than a one-off character. My favourite thing in this episode is the cliffhanger. I was so excited we'd be inside the Doctor's brain to the next episode. Remember, he's talking about episode 2. These are the comments under episode 2, because of course we haven't got to episode 3 at this point in the comments. Andrew Llewellyn says, one of my favourite things about this story, and there are many, is the new location in each episode. Emptyish Titan and a bit of space to establish episode 1, the busy By L Foundation in episode 2, the psychedelic Time Lord body in 3, and the mishmash of all in the explosive finale. Fantastic. And then we have Shane Play saying, K9, good boy. And here he is for the very first time, already his loyal but fussy and superior self right out of the gate. I have to say I always assumed that everyone's favourite Inte Ogday was meant to be an ongoing part of the series, and not just a guest for one arc, because his collar sort of matches the Doctor's scarf. Why add a detail like that if it wasn't supposed to be the Doctor's dog? I must also come out very much on the side of K9. I am an unabashed fan from the first time I laid eyes on him. A favourite moment from this episode, Leela, so what's this whole clone thing then? Dr. Marius, it will be another you, but it will degrade in about 10 minutes. Leela, sounds dull, I'm leaving. Such a great bit of writing that sums up a lot about her personality very succinctly. Most people would give their eye teeth to lay eyes on their own clone. I love how all you need is a nurse sitting at a desk asking certain questions and typing the answers to establish right off the bat that you are at a hospital. You could have a completely blank room with just that and it establishes it. Speaking of establishing things with a set, holy smokes, they really wanted us to know we're now in an eye clinic with that painting of an eye on the wall. Yeah, very true. They don't leave any of that to chance. Robbie Carnegie says, Kenneth Waller got around, didn't he? Yeah, he didn't get around beyond episode 2, though. He got killed last week, and we lost Roy Herrick and Roderick Smith this week. They're all you don't last long in The Invisible Enemy. But Kenneth Waller, who we'd established was Grandad in Bread, and Robbie adds in later Are You Being Served episodes, he was old Mr. Grace, and he was one of the old inventors in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I imagine he was one of those actors who, due to being bald, was probably playing old men when he was about 30. Those were the days, and there were people, who specialised in playing old men. Sort of John Normington did a little bit, and Clive Dunn, definitely. Nigel Pegram. There's all sorts of actors who specialised in playing old men, in the same way that some actors in their on their spotlight page has foreigners a speciality. Those were the days. Now you have to be as close to the thing you're playing. Which I think is slightly lost the art of what actors do, but there we go. David Gillespie Pratt says, last year I had some eye trouble and the optician I saw told me to wear a heat mask over my eyes. Imagine an eye mask you stick in the microwave and then sit and wear for 10 minutes a day. And every single time I put it on, it would be accompanied with blaster flash accident. The hours fly by in our house. Oh, I love it, David. It's very much... Look, I've got a security kitchen, so you are not alone. David Gillespie Pratt adds, what do we need to do to get a special Happy Times and Places for an episode of K9 Goes to Cockney, Australia? Yeah, I should do that for patrons, shouldn't I? I've got a list of things I should do for patrons. I need to actually do them. Jason Thompson comes in and says, glad to see you pick up on the injecting air into someone. One of the many things that make my biochemist brain implode in the whole Fantastic Voyage bit. Oh, Jason's going to add the science bit. Time Lord biology may be very different, but even so, I suspect there aren't many places in a brain where you can stand and enjoy a breeze, as they do in the upcoming Part 3. Yes, I mean, it is quite... Yes. The Baal Foundation being hollowed out fictional asteroid is a nice touch, an idea that's been around in sci-fi since at least the 1930s. Also, top marks for not having asteroids all over the background, as is so often seen in sci-fi. The real asteroid belt is so sparsely populated, even with the over 1 million we currently know of, that you can't see one from another. Thanks for that science, Jason. That was all very helpful. And now we have Nev Fountain. I seem to recall when I first got this message. Yes, there's a lot of snark here on the bland white sets, but no one seems to have pointed out that this was meant to be a hospital. I wasn't meaning to be snarky, Nev. I know that it's white because it's a hospital. I just don't really like that aesthetic, unless it gets spattered with blood. How is a space hospital supposed to look? All right, Nev. I think the look is a great contrast from the gloomy horror of Fang Rock and the murky image of the Fendal. That is a very fair point, actually, that watched in context. It is a bit of contrast. And obviously, this story with its sci-fi fare is also a huge contrast to the sort of gothic horror that surrounds it, too. It's the sci-fi meat in a gothic horror sandwich. If I'm honest... Enemy left far more of an impression on me than those two admittedly classier productions either side of it. Maybe because it was repeated, Nev? Because I don't remember Horror Fang Rock, An Image of the Fendal, but I do remember The Invisible Enemy, and I definitely like the other two better than this. Sorry, Invisible Enemy. I loved the space hospital setting and the doctor trying to fight the baddie while being ill himself, and I wrote lots of stories in my exercise books along similar lines. I loved the virus concept, and I even loved the look of the nucleus. Yeah, me too. It wasn't a problem for me at all. I drew a picture of him as soon as I saw him growing in the cubicle, although the fact I drew that picture between episodes 3 and 4 meant I didn't quite get it right and drew him with a splendid set of legs. The imagination, you see. You saw those legs in your mind's eye. I used to record dialogue on my cassette recorder with gaps for me to talk, so I could pretend to have a conversation with evil aliens, and the voice I would mimic for the evil aliens would invariably sound like the nucleus of the swarm. I loved Leela and K9 facing off in the corridor against the nucleus's minions, and I played out that scenario with my own talking K9 many times. I was 8 years old, and K9 came along at just the right time for me. I remember the thrill of seeing the target book in W.H. Smith's and was slightly disappointed that he wasn't on the cover. I loved him then and I love him still, and writing for John Leeson's Robot Dog for Big Finish was definitely something that was on my bucket list. So to sum up, it's great, and doing this story is a great opportunity to play Bob Baker and Dave Martin bingo. I have these on my bingo card so far. A memorable slogan intoned by many characters: "Contact has been made. Eldrad must live. The quest is the quest." A friendly character who gets turned into a baddie: Supervisor Lowe, Dr. Carter in The Hand of Fear, Rig in Nightmare of Eden. An amusingly prosaic way of dispatching the main monster: a scarf in The Hand of Fear, a recorder in The Three Doctors, a ray gun tied to a piece of string in The Invisible Enemy. Villains hoist by their own petard, by which I mean villains undone by their own technology. Well, I know what hoist by your own petard means. Nev, it's in Hamlet, Act 5. Styre with his ship, Trist at his CET transmitter, and the nucleus and its own hatching vats. Any others? Well, let's see. I mean, I think the main Bob and Dave bingo is writing things that they know will never be achieved on a Doctor Who budget, but writing them anyway. So very, very good. So those are everybody's comments. What am I going to choose as my favourite thing? Well, going into this, I thought I might be very self-indulgent. How can you be more self-indulgent than usual on a podcast where it's just you talking? Anyway, I'm thinking of being very self-indulgent and choosing "I am the nucleus of the swarm," because I remember that scene from my childhood. I remember the sort of slightly higher angle, I think, but I definitely remember the black bag with the white claw and the Doctor talking and the voice and I think that Bob and Dave thing of having a catchphrase is really helpful if you're a kid, but it kind of, although does he say it very often? But it certainly, look, that is a line that's stuck in my mind. I also, of course, have that great memory of the gunfights in the corridor and the bald man and Leela and zapping and him being at the other end of the corridor. I'd forgotten, though, that it's got that excellent visual of the guys through the cracks in the wall, or the bit where after Roderick Smith has been killed, Michael Sheard's sort of standing with one leg up on top of the broken bit of wall that they've zapped down, and that's just pretty cool and dramatic and feels like proper sort of hard sci-fi stuff, which you don't often get in Doctor Who. Sort of the sort of sci-fi things that you see in movies. Doctor Who has a kind of different aesthetic about it, but I really enjoy that. And as I say, I'd forgotten quite the exact nature of that visual, and I think it's really nicely shot with Leela close to us and those guys at the other end, and it's making very good use of what is a relatively small set. So I was very impressed by that, with the added frisson of it being, sort of half remembered in my head, but then bits of it not familiar at all and refreshingly good. But also, I think I do remember some of the bits in the brain, and I do like the lighting and the colour, and I think some of that set design work and the lighting work in the Doctor's brain is pretty good. I'd had it down as being largely ropey. I think it was occasionally ropey, but mostly good. So and I also like that scene between Parsons and Marius, where it looks like they're elevating Parsons to be a character who, gets to do something brave or whatever, and actually all that happens is they come in and they shoot him and he dies. But it gives him a nice sort of moment, which I think is pleasing, and it's the sort of thing that Doctor Who will occasionally accord even a fairly small character. But I'm really tossing up between the corridor fight, particularly because I'd forgotten about the actors, hiding in nipping out between the holes in the wall, and I think that the staging of that is actually quite nice, and the Doctor's brain and all the fun that they have by going, this ganglion's why I'm more intelligent than you, or oi, get off, that's my that's the bit that controls my sex thoughts or whatever. They have fun within the brain of. They make a virtue of the fact that they're inside the brain of our hero, and they treat it with a sense of humour that is quite enjoyable. And they can do that because it would seem like larks, were it not for the fact that Marius and co are besieged and there's a countdown going on. So it keeps the drama. Because there's so much drama going on outside, it means that we can have a bit of fun with the journey inside, because they're not slowing down to dick about, but the tenor of their conversation is witty, and they earn that, and it's not annoying, because we can have space for that, because the danger and the drama is coming from elsewhere, and they're still going about their business. So that's actually all really well deployed, the way that the humour and the action and the structure of it, actually, for a story that we've already discussed, takes place sort of all over the place and feels a bit sort of, we're back forth there, blah, blah. Actually, in terms of dramatic structuring, is very, very strong. So looking at that, I was really impressed with the lighting and the set inside the Doctor's brain. And I don't think Ian's going to choose a gunfight in a corridor. But I think I might. Partially because it's a memory, a sort of snatched memory, but partly because I thought it was rather well done. And I think Leela holding off those guys is dramatic, and I like the way that they get out of it with K9 temporarily, being slightly discombobulated, which means that Leela can fake her unconsciousness, and the baddies can get through in order to do what we need them to do for the plot without killing off one of the regulars. So I think it's all really well done, Bob Baker and Dave Martin. It is all really well structured in that sense. I like that gunfight, and the actors poking through, and Michael Sheard standing really coolly on that broken bit of wall. He's not going to say any of that, though, is he? Shall I just say the design in the Doctor's brain? Yeah, I think I'm going to try and... This never works. I'm going to try and go for what's more likely to be, because it was good, and the gunfight, surprised me, whereas... which I think was edging it forward, whereas what dominated it when I was watching it was the design inside the Doctor's brain, especially in those early scenes where I think they're actually pulled off rather well. And it's hard to do, and we would do it obviously very, very different these days, and it would be very, very different on a film budget. But I am going to choose the design, and particularly the lighting of particularly those early moments inside the Doctor's brain. They're pretty damn good. What's Iain Key going to choose?
Episode 3. Well, can't really say anything else but Fantastic Voyage, which I'd not seen at the time and I wasn't aware of, but obviously the journey through the Doctor's body, the mixture of the CSO sets along with the studio sets clashed a bit, but it's just pure fantasy. It's brilliant. I love the bits where the Doctor's defensives kick in and you've got furry balloons bouncing all over Louise Jameson, which was entertaining. And it's slightly let down by the prawn at the end, but let's not talk about that. My favourite thing for this episode, though, is the whole Fantastic Voyage premise and the journey through the Doctor's body.
Well, he chose it for the premise, whereas I chose it for the design. So let's see. I think we're probably on as an even there. So episode 1 to me, episode 2 to Ian. Episode 3 is a kind of draw. Yeah, so I think all things are possible here. And obviously, the listeners will have an opinion on whether I'm allowed the point for this or not. So I'll also throw it over to you. And let's see what happens in the comments next week when we bring The Invisible Enemy, my first memory of Doctor Who, to a conclusion. But in the meantime, don't inject air bubbles into your brain. It'd be really bad for you. You wouldn't have much happiness in any times or any places. But for now, from the inside of my head into the inside of yours, thanks for listening, and ta-ta! Thank you for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Iain Key, who can be found on Twitter at Iain Key. That's IAINKYE. And please do avail yourself of his latest book. I'm grateful to Ian and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible. They include Charles Gears, David Gillespie Pratt, David Gates, Matt Foy, Nev Fountain, Philip Fitchett, Mark Findlay Smith, Fleet Boy, Jasper Ferguson, Simon Farker, Bill Evanson, Jonathan Evans, Patrick Emery, Andrew Egan, Jeff Edwards, Andrew East, Drew, Sean Ditchfield, Tim Dickinson, Ian Dean, Shanty Day, Robert Davies, Hugh Davies, Chris Davies, John Davey, Rob Dawson, Paul Philip Dahlgren, Simon Curtis, Dave Curran, Steve Cunniff, David Crew, Sarah Krotzer, Oliver Crocker, Philip Craggs, Ben Cowdell, Leslie Coots, Matt Corner, Martin Cook, Ben Cook, Simon Coling, Cole, Charles Coffin and Mark Cockram. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like your name read out on the credits, that is but one of the joys of being a patron. You can become one of those over at patreon.com/Toby Haydock, where for as little as £3 a month you get advance releases, you get bonus material, you get exclusive looks behind the scenes at the various Blu-ray and DVD features and things that I do. You also get interviews from my archive, monthly AMAs, and even pictures of my dog. There's usually 3 releases per week of varying quality, I'm sure. I sometimes throw bits of my stand-up out there as well, but I try and make it worth your while, and it's a nice community, as I hope can be is evidenced by the way that the commentary is conducted. Those comments I read from listeners, which I don't have to ever sort of vet or edit or change or chastise. So come over to Patreon, but if you can't, you can go to kofi.com/Toby Haydock and throw me a couple of quid whenever you fancy it, if I sound particularly hungry or if I've done a podcast you've particularly enjoyed. But it doesn't all have to be about money, of course it doesn't. But I do appreciate you listening, and if you do enjoy these things and would like to show your appreciation in a way that isn't financial, then you can do that just by giving me a little bit of your time and going over to wherever you get your podcasts and giving these a 5-star rating and a few lines of review saying what you like about them, in order that other people might be drawn to listen. So thanks, and but mostly thanks for listening. I'm really grateful. I'm not just shouting into the void. I am all over social media. I've got a Facebook page. I've got 2 Twitters. There's @Haydock Podcasts and @Toby Haydock. I'm on Blue Sky as well. I'm Toby Haydock on Blue Sky. I think there are other bits and bobs, but you'll find me. And I'm on Instagram @Toby.Haydock. The only one I'm not on, I think, is TikTok, unless there's probably ones that have been invented that I've never heard of, and I'm not on those. But you know, I think you could get plenty. All right, there's plenty of me out there. Some, I think, not unfairly could say too much. So go and do that if you like. And there's also, of course, my YouTube channel. I'd love it if you could subscribe to that and give it the thumbs up and things. And these get posted directly to there with a sort of placeholder logo, because I know some people like listening to podcasts on YouTube. I know that because one of my children told me, so I'm just doing it. So I'm just keeping up to speed of the young people. And of course, I was a young person when this story was on. But as I record this, Dalek is celebrating this week 20 years. I remember cycling into town to do a gig at the Comedy Store, and cycling is obviously more dangerous than getting the bus or getting a cab or whatever, and genuinely thinking, oh God, I hope I don't get knocked off my bike tonight, because it'd be just my luck to die before the Daleks come back. And that was, and then after it was on, I went to the pub up the road, the Trevor Arms, with Andy Murray, who wrote the biography of Nigel Neal, and I talk to Andy probably most days these days, and we live not far from each other. But I've since been away, moved to London, and now I'm back. And the Trevor Arms is not far away, but I tend not to go to pubs anymore. But how funny, 20 years. And yet, I was talking to a friend tonight. He's working with somebody who was born in 2002. So she wouldn't have even been cognizant of Dalek because she would have been 3. And now she's an adult who has responsibilities and all sorts. Isn't that terrifying? So which is why it's no surprise that so many people from The Invisible Enemy, which I think of as relatively newish Doctor Who, anything that had the misfortune of being watched by me, I always felt was slightly tainted because, of course, Doctor Who was always better in the old days. So as soon as I started watching Doctor Who, it was never quite as good. Maybe that's why I didn't remember Horror of Fang Rock and Image of the Fendal, because I absolutely love those, and they're proper Doctor Who to me, in a way that The Invisible Enemy is sort of slightly tainted by the fact that I'm in it. I'm not in it, but I'm involved in it. It's taking self-loathing to a ridiculous degree, but there we go. I wouldn't want to claim my. Don't clone me. I think there's plenty. We've got more than enough. Right. Anyway, that'll do. Otherwise we'll just fall into a pit of despair. We don't want to do that. It's fun, isn't it? It's Doctor Who, and it was my first Doctor Who, but it was a long. Well, it was a long time